Thanks all for joining me. My name is Kevin Anyango, the co-founder of Mtandao Varsity School of Soft Skills. And the platform talks about those behaviors or characteristics that employers are looking for. But today, I am not alone. Today, I am with Jay Naidoo. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, listen, I don't even know where to start because, first of all, how was it working with Nelson Mandela, Jay?
Well, Nelson Mandela was a human being, but an extraordinary one. Someone that understood that the journey of life really is not just about politics or about making money or about being in business, but as a servant leader, is how do you make your life worthwhile? How do you contribute towards challenging oppression or victimization or racism or any form of prejudice or discrimination? In fact, he often described that the most important goal in life is to make a journey from the arrogance of the mind, of the ego, of its desires, of its prejudices, its cravings, its attachments, to the seat of the soul, which is your heart, which is in fact more important than your brain. And if you live from your heart, then you live a life that is aligned to the great spirit that has created everything in our world, one of living with compassion and living with kindness, living in solidarity with other people, but also appreciating the fact that we are part of nature. We are not apart from nature. So I think these are the lessons that Mandela tried to teach us about tolerance, about reconciliation, about forgiveness. And I think we're still in the process of trying to learn that.
Wow. Well, for those that are just joining us, I'm talking to Jay, who used to be in Mandela's cabinet. Jay, I don't want to dwell most on Mandela, but I've got to ask this question again. Some of my generation are saying that Mandela might have
sold us out.
Well, didn't do much in terms of lives. Like it was a failed presidency.
Well, if you look at the life of Mandela over the arc of his entire life, you must be blind or deaf or insensitive to not understand the tremendous importance. In fact, one of the most important prisoners of conscience of the 20th century, not to understand his level of sacrifice that he made in pursuit of delivering democracy to our people. Now, if you understand Mandela and his generation, they were committed to dislodging apartheid, of course, a crime against humanity, and they succeeded in doing it. It's a generation that led the fight against apartheid. We replaced apartheid with a constitutional democracy, and within which it gave us access to the levers of power to improve the lives of our people. So Mandela's mandate, and as a generation, was to deliver us democracy. Mandela never said that it is his role to try and transform the economy, or it was to give us the means to do that. If our leadership that followed him failed to do that, ended up feeding at the trough of public resources, ended up betraying everything that that generation stood for, should we point a finger at Mandela, or should we point the people sitting in the union buildings since he left?
Wow. Well, I would answer that question. So for you, working next to Nelson Mandela must have been a, a gift, really, isn't it, to work with someone like him?
Yeah, we're all capable of being a Mandela. It's not, Mandela was a human being who understood his purpose, the meaning of his human experience. We all carry the potential to be Mandelas. Just that we choose not to do that because we are trapped by the narrowness and the arrogance of our minds. So part of Mandela's journey was to transcend that, to see something greater that he could do with this privilege, with this honor of being given the human experience, to hold his hand out to those that were vulnerable, those that were victimized. Now, that is understanding what made Mandela. We are all capable of that. We choose not to do that. And so I think that working with Mandela, of course, Mandela made mistakes. There's no human being alive, including Jesus Christ, that did not make mistakes, or the Buddha, or Krishna, or Muhammad. We're all capable of mistakes. But if we look at the arc of our lives, of those prophets, of those sterling leaders like the Amilcar Cabrals, the Patrice Lumumba's, the Abdel Nassers, all of them sacrificed their own families, their own personal lives to serve the society, to fight oppression, to deliver a better quality of life to our people. So I think that's what we should approach life with ability to say, how can I improve myself? And one of the ways to improve yourself is to understand that the most important journey you will make in life is a journey inside yourself, to deal with your own demons, to deal with your own trauma, to deal with the pain and suffering that you are born with that is ancestral. And that's what Mandela tried. He said the most painful journey you will make in life is the shortest one, from the head to the heart.
Wow. Talking about choice, this brings us to our topic today about young people. Um, First of all, your country, South Africa, is amongst one of those countries that is affected hugely by unemployment of young people. Is it the problem of young people themselves, or is it the problem of the government? Why are we jobless? When I say we, I mean young people.
Well, I don't think you can blame young people for being young. I think the problem is the system is broken. We have a broken health system. We have a broken food system. We have a broken political system. If you look at Africa, we have 54 fiefdoms run by tyrants, many of them too old to even understand technology. They should be grandfathers playing with grandchildren and let younger people lead. So we are the richest continent in the world. Our resources fuel the global economy. So the question is, why are we poor? We are poor because of poor governance, because of the lack of ethical leadership, because we do not have the political will, because we do not understand what it means to be African. We all want to be a poor photocopy of some Western model or Chinese model or Indian model or Russian model. So I think the most important thing for Africans, young Africans, is to understand who you are beyond the living under the shadow of the last 500 years of slavery, of colonization, of a very brutal form of mining, of resource exploitation that has devastated our communities, that is devastating our natural environment, that has left no resources or wealth in the hands of our people, but a predatory elite that rules us, and foreigners, the global north, or any other country that sends their companies in to exploit our resources and our people.
Jay, it's good to say all that, but I want to talk to you individually. Well, you've had a very admirable career in public service. You were a politician yourself. You formed political parties. You worked for United Nations. You did amazing stuff. So we talk about system, then we blame people like you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. You should blame people like me. My generation has let you down. And so because we've become arrogant and we've become greedy. And because many of us see going into politics or government or private sector as with the sole purpose of accumulation, of becoming wealthy, it's a failed model. That it should be about service. So yes, I think my generation should be blamed, and because we cling to power, but we're incapable of thinking in a new way. And what the world has to understand in a changed world of pandemics, of technological innovation, of a new way in which young people are seeing their future, this, the focus should not be on jobs. It should be on creating meaningful livelihoods that deepen our connection with the land or with our resources. We have assets that we could use. So I would say, yes, I think your generation and the young generation, who are the majority of citizens in Africa, should aspire to something very different. We need to get to a post-liberation model. The liberation model gratefully liberated us from our foreign oppressors, but many of the liberation movements and the leaders thereof are now eating the children of the revolution. So we need to get to a model of thinking about the world that is very different to the ones that we thought about in fighting for our freedom. The question is, what does freedom mean today? In South Africa, where 70% of young people coming out of 12 years of education have very few skills and no jobs and unlikely to have a decent job in their lifetime. We have to rethink education. We have to rethink health. We have to rethink politics and even democracy.
But Jay, talking about system, how can they change that if they don't get the opportunity to get in and work in this system? Or is the system so complicated and too huge that cannot be changed?
Well, when I was your age, what did I do? I went there and I went to go and listen to Steve Biko, and he said that the mind of the oppressed is the main weapon in the hands of the oppressor, because we have nothing to lose but our chains. So we had a system that is described as a crime against apartheid. We had no money. We didn't have technology. We were alone. But we stood up and said, we will defy the system. And we brought it down. It wasn't the generosity of the apartheid regime that gave us our freedom. It's our people standing up and saying, we had enough. And that's what you need to stand up and tell our new oppressors who look like us, that we had enough of their oppression, and say, we want to change the system. The only people capable of changing any system in the world are young people, not people that are my age. It is young people like you that need to go into the trenches to change the way in which our African continent works, and to bring the vision and the ambitions of young people into the center of politics. I'm not a politician. I never was a politician. I'm a political activist. And today I'm still a political activist in my late 60s, because that's what gets me up in the morning. Not about political parties. Political parties will sell us out, because the goal of a political party is to stay in power and to keep the leaders of that political party enriched. Young people shouldn't accept that. Define the democracy you want. Define the economy you want. Define the education you want.
Wow. Well, listen, the platform talks about those skills that employers are looking for. And these are some of those behaviors, like leadership skills, ability to solve problems, ability to work within a team. Do you believe in this kind of stuff? Do you believe in soft skills?
Of course. Soft skills are essential. Emotional intelligence. I mean, if you do not know who you are, if you do not know your spiritual traditions, if you don't understand the way of the ancients before colonization, of their relationship with the environment, if an indigenous leader, if you go back in your village and talk to the old people, when they look at the forest, they don't look at timber to be cut down and sold. They look at the spirit of the forest, the spirit of the desert, the spirit of the oceans and of our rivers, of the mountain. All of them are our ancestors because we are of the earth. So if you look at that, why did we lose that? Africa is the cradle of humanity. Look at the disaster that humanity is in today. In fact, we need to go back to what made us truly African as the cradle of humanity and recalibrate our relationship, not just with each other, but with every other species and every other part of our physical and natural environment that brings us back into harmony and not into division about race, about culture, about language, about sexual orientation. We should dispense with all that divisiveness and say, what is the purpose I serve as in this human experience, in this lifetime, that makes it worthwhile? And making money isn't the sole goal of the human experience. In fact, it's not a goal at all. It is to live in a way that respects others and respects the environment in which we live and respects the traditions from which we come.
Why don't they teach soft skills in schools?
Because the system is not designed for that. The system is designed to create slaves that are disconnected from who they are, disconnected from their spiritual traditions, so that you are part of a production line. And now, as you see technological revolution taking place, those people, the 1% that control the wealth of this world, that became, who quadruple their wealth in the time of pandemic, when hundreds of millions of people were thrown into poverty, unemployment, and hunger. These people have been making money. Now, they don't want people who can think about who I am, about my rights as a human being. They want machines. And now, increasingly, they don't even need us. And that's why they're introducing new controls to stop Africans or people from the developing world coming to their countries. Why do you think the rise of right-wing populism in the US or in Canada or in Europe, it is, and why do you think that what's happening under the auspices of a pandemic, the rising authoritarianism in Africa, where resource wars are starting again, like we see in Mozambique, or we're seeing in the DRC, or we're seeing in Sudan? All of the rules around environmental respect, about compliance, about human rights, about social justice have been thrown out of the window. And so what we're having is a situation where more and more things are going to get worse for us unless young people stand up, who are today the majority of South Africa's citizens, and say, we've had enough. We've had enough of the lives that you've given us.
Jay, you keep talking about young people and rising up, but if you look at those leaders, or let's say popular people that are young, when they stand out, they're being seen as rebels. For example, in your country, Malema. What do you say about his style of leadership and his style of the way he talks?
Well, I think that, for me, I don't believe in a model where a leader is a commander. A leader is a servant. When a person positions themselves as the Messiah, that's when we will have tyranny. No one. We do not need messiahs in Africa. We need servant leaders, people who immerse themselves in a painstaking way, working in the trenches around building social cohesion, building unity, about building bottom-up development. We do not, South Africa was never liberated by leaders. It was liberated when people stood up and organized themselves to demand democracy. We were just the mouthpiece, the microphone of the people. And once we stop being a microphone and think that we are responsible, that's when we lose the plot and we fail, because we replace one oppression with another oppression.
Well, you sit in a board, Mo Ibrahim Foundation, and every year, after every, I think 5 years, he usually awards like good leaders, and he gives a lot of money. You've never given money to a young person, Jay.
Never given the money to?
A young person, or to a young leader. You always, if you look at the
Oh,
history of the
well,
foundation,
the design of the program, which is to reward excellence in leadership of heads of state who comply not just with the Constitution, but carry with them the spirit of reconciliation, of building, of reimagining a different Africa. And it's an award that, of course, it's bigger than even the Nobel Prize and it's issued every year. But the fact that we don't issue it every year is a very strong message that there's no one deserving of it. But if you take the fact that we have laureates that are incredible people that have led African countries, whether that's President Shisano, whether that's President Festus Mogae, whether President Pohamba from Namibia, or whether President Pires from the Cape Verde Islands. Many of these are extraordinary leaders who have done amazing work in their countries. So it is a specific award to an executive head of state. Now, we should have other awards that talk about youth leadership, women's leadership, rural leadership. I think that's the responsibility of other organizations. But the Mo Ibrahim Foundation has introduced this specific way because we see it as an important lever to encourage our leaders and heads of state to comply with the Constitution, to comply with human rights. So we don't claim to be doing all the work that needs to be done. I think that rewarding NGO leaders or business leaders who are young people in Africa are very important. And there is some work that we do to encourage young leadership in Africa. But we are not there to do all the work that needs to be done. There's too much to be done. And that's why I'm talking to people like you who can start other initiatives that celebrate the true leadership of young people.
Well, I'm extremely honored to have you on this platform, Jay. For those that have just joined us, this is Mtandao Varsity School of Soft Skills. Today I'm talking to Jay Naidoo. He calls himself a political analyst, but Jay has got incredible CV in terms of working in public. Jay, how do you build courage?
How do we?
How do you build courage? How should young? Okay, no, forget about that question. You find in a workplace where you find young people are being used or are being controlled, they're not being given that opportunity to actually excel. We talk about meaningful employment. How do they address that? Do they work out? Do they just sit and carry on and get the salary?
Well, you know, the economy is changing rapidly, Kevin. I mean, in the time when I was organized, and this is now going back to the 70s, when you looked at a factory to organize, there were usually thousands of workers and there was one employer. Today, in one workplace, you'll find a dozen different employers. The security is one employer, the cleaning staff is another employer. Things are all outsourced, subcontracted. So the design of the workplace is different. Increasingly, most work will be done by machines. Even today in South Africa, you see deep level mining has been mechanized. So the question really is, are we looking to create jobs? And it's clear that governments and private sector are unable to create the jobs. So how do we promote social entrepreneurship? How do we promote a different way of thinking about meaningful livelihoods, where we are supporting young people, like in this technological revolution? The ability of you to run this program should become an enterprise. It's a social enterprise. And you should find a way to monetize it so that it provides an income for you. And the same thing in relation to land, or the same thing in relation to any of the other services. Today, the ability for you to create for the creative sector to grow. What is South Africa's greatest export? It's its culture, it's its music, it's its medicine, it's its approach to life. How do you monetize that? And how do we get governments to support that rather than the traditional way of looking at jobs? We have to change our mindset about that, our paradigm of thinking. At the same time, we should be ensuring that every citizen is entitled to a basic income. In South Africa, we are demanding, and I fully support that, a basic income grant to everyone that allows them access to their basic needs. Beyond that, we should be looking at supply side measures that promote entrepreneurialism amongst young people. But the system is not designed, the current system is not designed for that, because it squeezes out innovation. It squeezes out entrepreneurship that comes from young people. And therefore, we have to operate outside of that. And that's where government supply side measures are really important. That's why thinking about a new way of how we think about this globally and in Africa is really important. And that's new ideas. We have to reimagine the economy, reimagine the future of Africa, reimagine youth entrepreneurship in a different way.
Well, talking about paradigm shift of the way we think, my last question to you is about critical thinking. How do we develop this?
Well, I think we have to change education, because right now we've outsourced education to a bureaucratic way of people regurgitating information. You know, you spend 7 years studying as a doctor. It's unlikely that that would provide any basis for you to be a real doctor. You know, if you think of China at the point where they trained barefoot doctors, people that went around building preventative health, built a whole system of how do we take responsibility as individuals for our own health, rather than outsourcing it to some big pharma company, which wants to make us a client from the time we're born to the time we die, because it's profitable for them. If you look at the COVID vaccine implementation, a company like Pfizer boasts about having made $33 billion because it monetizes our health. You know, this is the type of economy we don't need anymore. You know, we need the type of economy that looks at human health and human well-being, about social cohesion, about protection of our natural environment, about protection of the human rights of our people. These are the new things we need to think about as we begin to reimagine an economy. Today's global economy is broken. It benefits a small minority, usually living in the global north. We have to rethink what economic development is in Africa, and how our assets, which are valuable assets, most important, which is the young population, how these assets can be harnessed to deliver the type of true freedom that our young people want and that they deserve as their birthright.
Well, you're talking about the global north, Jay. You and I, we're not in the south. So why don't you go back home then?
I am home. I'm just here now visiting a grandson that was born last week. But my home is Johannesburg.
So you are based at home. And so, Jay, what you're talking about here now, do you think it's practical? Talking about changing the system, talking about a different way of thinking. Are they just nice words that they cannot really work?
Well, you know, when I was your age and a student activist and then a trade unionist, you know, our parents said, oh, it's impossible. You'll get thrown into jail. You'll get tortured. You'll get detained. You'll get killed. Well, I didn't listen to them. I did what I wanted to do.
You did very well, Jay.
Well, you should do much better than I did. That's your responsibility now.
Jay, xenophobia in your country. We talk about Africa having a same voice, Africa create opportunity within Africa, but we are fighting each other. We are stealing each other. In your country, for instance, what's the problem with that?
Well, it's about, again, politics and the role of political parties. It's about, our country has gone through a terrible bout of corruption, orchestrated by the highest office in our country. It's left, even our economy damaged, our democracy damaged. And now you have people that will try to use scapegoats to blame for their failures. I've written an article about this in which I've said very clearly that even if we had to expel every single foreigner in our country, we will still have high levels of criminality and unemployment and joblessness and hunger. So how do we blame foreigners for state capture, which happened under our watch? It's all South Africans that are in power, that hold the reins of power. So I think secondly, it's like many young South Africans don't realize what sacrifices Africa made for us to secure our freedom, of providing a home for thousands of exiles that had to leave our country because of political persecution. Many of them don't understand that there were hundreds of thousands of migrant workers that worked in our mines and built our country and participated in our struggle for freedom. I myself am the great grandson of an immigrant. So it's that flawed notion exploited by politicians that create divisions and try to produce the scapegoats that we need for the failures that are our failures as South Africans. And that's something we have to change. And all of us have to take a stand and speak out the truth against this, which is happening.
Listen, I listened to you the whole day. And I cannot thank you enough, Jay, for being here. Look, every guest, when they come to my show here, I usually ask them to listen to the next person. Now, you being here is a blessing to me, really, to be honest with you. And you are changing the platform. I'm going to ask you this, what is possible? I would like to have Mo Ibrahim himself here. I know you can bring him here, Jay.
well, that you should approach the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Of course, he's very happy to support young entrepreneurs like yourself across the continent. But there's just so much one can do in the limited time we have, and that's why, again, it's my challenge. It's like there are many young people like you who want to talk to me, who want my support, and I'm prepared to give it. I give advice. You can decide whether you like it or don't like it. That's your choice.
It's a privilege to have you. So I'm going to ask you again, why not bring Mo Ibrahim here?
Well, I don't run Mo Ibrahim's diary, my dear friend.
You talk to him. You can pick up for it now and say, hey, listen, there's this guy called Kevin. Then we have a dialogue.
No. You see, you're a journalist and you're a very bright person. I am not here to do your job. You have to do your job. Now go do it now. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I have to go.
Well, thank you very, very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much. I will keep in touch.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.